Reducing that to 5. Magic.
At the admin committee.
Community development.
Fairly certain it was in full council. I'd have to look at my notes, but
It only came to admin.
Yeah, it just came to admin.
The discussion, if we would be change it from 5 to 7, I would have said we should change it to 5.
business owners thought that 7 PM was too late and it was affecting Philly Street.
That was a regular
There
meeting.
was.
you talked
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Yes, so it was a very detailed conversation at admin. We talked with some of the business owners that came and we had a 45-minute discussion. The enforcement hours has always been the 8 to 7. It's just pre-COVID. It was always up, then COVID, then we stopped and we were short on staff and we were just going back to the full enforcement hours. But our parking director, I don't think the idea, they didn't have a problem. They understood it. It was going to 7. It was the way it wasn't advertised enough, or the meters weren't showing. The meters do say that it's till 7, but some of the meters are old and it's hard to read. So they were gonna get. Yeah, and we do, that was part of that ARP funding that we did get up. Our meters are in the process of getting all updated with of the times and the amounts and everything will be digital on the new meters.
Meters to make it much more obvious.
And it's going to be an ongoing, I think we're going to bring it up again in admin, obviously, parking issues with their income is concerning, and we brought that up to admin.
Right now, we just have an ordinance to clean up the parking ordinance.
I guess that was my question. Is this so vital? It's worth advertising this now when we expect to be advertising another change to the parking ordinance after more discussion within
Well,
some quantity of time.
it is vital that we change it because our current ordinance gives free parking certain places from 1972.
Nice.
So we are getting some pushback.
Okay.
It absolutely does need updated. If we change the enforcement hours, that's fine. We can change the enforcement hours. What we want to tell our staff what they need to enforce. If they, they're going to enforce, they're not going to enforce during certain events. And that's not necessarily on here. It's just that they're not going to enforce on certain events. So I believe it needs updated.
It's just update it first, then you have the basic template, and then if you have any changes, we can change those later, but.
Process works. I'm just saying, like, if there's a reason to do it now, that's fine. But if there isn't, it might make sense to wait.
I would think it's imperative that it gets done sooner rather than later to avoid issues.
The discussion of.
Continue in admin. Okay. Is part of that conversation gonna be?
Yes.
They were like 5.
Yeah, yes, I think so. And they had expressed that some of the people who wanted to come were not able to attend. So follow up with them and have more discussion. What?
There were 5 business owners that came?
They were business owners. There were 3 or 4 more who
Yeah, at
couldn't
least a
come.
couple more that weren't able to attend that particular meeting. There wasn't a whole lot of notice. This all happened from like Thursday to Tuesday over one weekend.
But we
Um,
invited them to come back.
right.
Continue the discussion.
Right, we'll talk to them more and send them more and follow up more and all that.
Advertising the ordinance.
Does not need a roll call, right? All in favor? of the revised parking ordinance, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anything else, Samantha?
We have one more, and our other one is regarding the pension plan for the management. So we'd like to move to approve the ordinance amending the management pension plan.
This was already advertised, right? This is a vote now to approve the ordinance. Requires a roll call vote.
Ron,
Yes.
Bowser. Yes. Barry. Yes. Rafa.
Yes.
Lancaster.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Steele. Taylor. Warnock.
Yes.
12 yes.
Motion carries.
So just two updates before we get to motions. The comprehensive plan is still working through. Right now, we're working towards trying to get some public input on that. So it'll probably be the next thing that comes around with the comp plan. And then just so it's on everyone's radar, because it's probably going to cost a little bit of money. The move for the code department in terms of software from Unicity to iWorks hasn't quite gone to plan. And so staff is working diligently to get that sorted out, but there may be an additional cost at some point, just so folks are aware. And then under old business here, there's a discussion of a motion that's in your packet. And so this came through the committee, but there's a motion to advertise an ordinance amending chapter 327, which is property maintenance, and the amended ordinance is in your packet with underlines.
So you're skipping your first one?
No, I'm just doing the order there in the minutes. So
Any discussion? Ordinance change. For advertising, so it just needs a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Carries.
and then under new business, we had a discussion with Mark Lazari about the active transportation plan. And so we also have a motion to adopt the active transportation plan that was prepared by the EADS group. And so that'll be a resolution that we're transportation plan.
Really substantial packet that you received separately.
And Barb's here in case if anybody has any questions.
We do have consultants here with us tonight to answer any questions.
Is this the moment to ask those questions? Okay, sorry, just making sure. I didn't know if there was, sometimes there's presentations with this stuff. Anyway, my specific question was, I'm looking at the matrix talking about how to pay for this. And I am a little confused. Grant award amounts, for example, does that mean we have received those, or those are potential sources of funding?
Can we, yeah, Barb, come up to the podium and handle these things.
On page 3, oh, 41, sorry.
I didn't bring it.
And then same thing, I apologize, I'm not sure what the difference between supplemental and single source means. What does that mean? Under level. I guess the big question, the overall question is, how are we gonna pay for all this? That's the simple question. And I know it's laid out in different formats in the packet. So that's why I was asking more specifically, what is single source versus supplemental, et cetera.
This is a plan. So it'll guide how staff executes things in the future, but it's not a prescriptive.
Source is that you received one funding source that will pay for the entire project. Supplemental means that you have some of the funding and you have some more of the funding and more of the funding from different sources.
Some might be a grant, et cetera, that sort of thing. Understood.
Sometimes the grants require a match. So you could either match it with, sometimes with in-kind cash or in-kind services, or occasionally what you can do is match one grant with another grant and thereby combining those two to have the entire amount covered. And there, no. It's a planning grant. And this is the funding source for this plan was a no match grant. So the grant covered the entire source of funds to pay for this plan. So the plan sets forth the priorities that could be prioritized. And then as the appetite or desire for each of those priorities becomes current, then funding would be sought and the partners would be mobilized in order to get the grants in order to move the project forward.
Grants out there, like Walkworks they sent us
Yeah, get 'em.
into, yeah,
Got a number of them.
So it says 100,000, 300,000. So is that the answer?
Depends on the project, and each project, depending on the time frame that the project is desired to move forward, at that time, you would decide what part of that project you're going to move forward and what piece of the funding you'll go after in order to make that happen. So there isn't, we have done a, within the matrix, you'll see there is a column that says costs. Turning to the next page. So then you see the matrix has the action items. Those are the priorities that were established by the steering committee within each of the categories. And then there's an implementation, whether that's a short-term, mid-term, or long-term type of a project. And then the costs are levels of magnitude, whether it's a single dollar or $4 signs, just like going to a restaurant, and whether it's the, are we going cheap tonight or are we going expensive tonight? So that gives you an idea of how much funding would be available.
$1 sign to $3 sign?
Or sign, but there may only be one of the $4 sign items. Most of them are 1, 2, or 3.
I think I'm clear on this answer, but the question that I've been asked is, at any point, are residents going to be responsible for this finance?
Pay taxes.
If the borough wants it to happen, the borough's going to want to invest in some of this project at some point. So I would say absolutely. And so via that, yes, borough taxpayers, absolutely. I would suggest that, yeah, and I'm 1 vote out of 12. I would suggest that, yeah, borough infrastructure dollars would be well spent on implementing some or all of this plan, some part of it.
And we are encouraging the public to get involved.
Absolutely. We've had an active transportation plan. We've had a bike ped committee for some time that had this active transportation plan has been developed through, I think it's been about 6 or 7 months, maybe a year.
The funding was awarded last September, and the requirement of the grant is that the plan is adopted by this September in order to meet the requirements of the grant. So
Not commit the borough to any specific expenditures. Plan.
Going.
forward with some of the recommendations.
Just become available and so forth, then we can move forward with each portion of it.
piece of that would then be probably put forth to the public in order to have comments. We've already done a public engagement process as part of the making this plan, but then it would be an ongoing situation where, as if a priority became prioritized that you wanted to move it forward, then there would be a group of people who would work towards getting the funding and establishing the partnerships and engaging the public and having discussions about moving that piece forward and what all that would mean. Yeah.
Except if we adopt the plan, it opens up grant opportunities that are otherwise closed to us, correct?
Yeah, and actually adopting this plan, in many ways, it prioritizes you, gives you higher priority for grant funding because the plan has already been vetted within the public. And therefore PennDOT and DCED and DCNR look at it very favorably because it's already been vetted through the public. So yeah, that's a great point. Thanks. Yeah.
that point, but can I ask, in terms of, so this is not the first borough bike plan that this council has seen. And I think that question about who's paying for this when made a lot more sense. That question makes a lot of sense at all times. And when we looked at this maybe 6 or 7 years ago, the funding environment was such that there really just was not, it was very, very difficult to find, even having these plans on deck. Can you comment on the current sort of funding scenario for these types of bike ped projects relatively? So, you know, my understanding is we could, if we wanted to, ask our staff to go full bore on every single bullet point here. And that's one option. And one option is to set it on the table and do nothing with it. And I think there's a lot in between there. And I think there's good faith efforts to get it there.
Right.
It's more than biking. It's just.
Yeah, understand. It's the larger picture. What we've been focusing on with our complete streets is what we've been focusing on with a lot of things. So I guess my question is, can you comment on sort of, are we likely to see, you know, we're willing to commit, you know, find some 15% or 20% matches that you see here. Are we willing to, is the funding scenario going to be favorable? Is it going to be worth our time? Because I was told 6-7 years ago, it's not even worth their time.
So active transportation funding has received a lot of investment recently, and they have hired a new active transportation planner for the state of Pennsylvania, and the former one has been promoted within PennDOT. So there is more capacity for funding active transportation than there ever has before. And with the new infrastructure bill, that also contains funding for active transportation, which involves biking, walking, and transit. So we had Indigo as part of our steering committee. So having bus access is also a very large part of this plan and the planning effort. So yeah, it's a really favorable time for active transportation.
I have mentioned before at one of the meetings, connecting Indiana to Marion Center somehow. What type of security? Make it safe. Lighting?
Right, that would be decided when you were to move that project forward. So you'll have to balance costs versus safety. So there is a wide range. So what you could do is just put up a sign that says share the road and have at it. So that's one level of safety. And then there would be protected bike lanes or protected walking lanes where you have actual stakes like they do in the city of Pittsburgh. There's actual bollards or stakes in the road that separate the vehicles from the bikes and pedestrians. And additional lighting is always a good safety and security measure. So there's just a wide range of what you can invest in, how much you can afford, and what people's level of safety and security is to do that.
Environment, because it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So if you can tie the project to something that's already being done, so if you know there's a road that's being resurfaced, if you can connect with PennDOT during that resurfacing project and get a wider shoulder at that time, that is a very good way to stretch dollars that are already being spent in order to increase safety. Sure.
In here, and I apologize, I was looking for it, but I read it earlier. It says a lot of this falls on the staff, the borough staff. So my question is, and I assume the answer, but I want to actually hear the answer. You guys are comfortable taking on this burden as borough staff? Because it literally says in here, people must relentlessly seek funding from multiple sources, or they will never be able to pay for this.
Yeah, and
Jobs. So.
grant person. So when and we have meetings with Sam, who's from Walkworks daily meetings, and hopefully down the, like, continue in that public or community development with an economics person
This was something that would fall under,
involved under their elm and working with Kyle for grants and stuff as comes up.
The County Active Transportation Committee. And we're meeting again tomorrow. And the same consultants, we're working with the county that we hired to work with us. So, you know, when Tammy wants to go up to Marion Center, that entire trip past Bilo is going to be in the county. It's not going to be in Indiana Borough.
That'll be a county project.
These are just hypotheticals, things that people don't think about.
We're working together and we're working together with White Township also. So
one other question then, if we have a rich uncle that dies, we can pay for all of this, right? What would the cost be from the, do we have that number?
Oh, we didn't, yeah, no.
Like,
As you've pointed out in regards to like our paving and our sidewalks, that's a moving number, like even day to day right now, right? So
If we did it all, it would be $50 million, whatever. I
Today,
wasn't
yeah,
sure.
We had a number today.
we could do, there's some choices in there, I think, if that's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of alluded to that. I just didn't know if there was if we did everything to the full hill, it would be X.
Interesting. No, we did not crunch those numbers. We didn't think that was a worthwhile effort, quite honestly, sorry. But if your rich uncle dies and leaves the money, I will be happy to crunch those numbers for you. Call me.
I think your original question, like what commitment we're having, we don't really have any dollar commitment, but I think a vote on this, a vote in favor of this is a commitment of this borough to focus on active transportation ideas and to use this as a guide and to, I know what relentlessly mean. I think relative to, you know, not too long ago, we are relentlessly, that we have staff actively looking for grants. So
I know there's a lot of different grants for a lot of different things. We still have sewers, for example, right? So.
To focusing on active transportation and using this as a guide. So I hope we don't just, we do have the power to just put it on the table and not pay attention to it. So we will, you know, we don't, I don't want to do that. And I think that is up to us to sort of use as a guide and try to encourage staff to, within their means, you know, within their means to try to go after these things.
I agree. I just don't want to be at the detriment of some of the other things, i.e. the sewer system. That's a big problem. That's all.
I did want to ask you a question. You had mentioned sort of thinking about synergies between, you know, when I know, but I had a comment and a question. I did. A comment. I mean, I know you can interrupt. Are there opportunities for the borough? So we are doing our own paving. You know, we contract for a mile or two of paving a year, and then we're also doing a lot of in-house paving. Are there opportunities for us just within house to like say, let's put lines on these streets? Let's, you know, can we do some sort of low hanging fruit to reach this? It doesn't necessarily require a giant grant. It might, you know, it includes.
we're getting into nitty gritty that would seem to me come after we have a commitment to do this. Right now, all of we have to do is approve this as a plan, which in part allows us to get the money from the grant that is supposed to pay for what we've already done.
and the hopes, yeah.
I call for a vote. Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my question is, isn't this plan in conjunction with Indiana County too? It's not just Indiana Borough. Ultimately, it involves the rest of the county, correct?
Well, not exactly.
This plan is specifically for the borough.
Or they got the same grant, but we all got the same grant, us and the county and that, but we had to do it ourselves.
From Indiana to Clymer, isn't that like out of Indiana?
That's why I just mentioned that before. That
They have their own plan, like this is just, and then hopefully we can take this plan and go to like bike peds. Hopefully that can get back on, get more people involved in the bike ped committee, reach out to, you know, those type of committees and use this plan as a guide.
Plan that are within the borough. right? So connecting
I understand.
the
I
buses,
I understand.
but then the things that go out of the borough,
I know.
we'd want to coordinate.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Ultimately,
all
it's
agree with
going to
you.
be coordinating with the county.
Partially. Parts are in the borough and we can do those on our own. The parts that extend
I
beyond.
understand that.
Okay, so that's, yes, I think we all agree.
That's why all the maps in this plan are of the borough and not of the county or.
To that, the White Township at their last supervisors meeting passed their complete streets policy. And their complete streets policy is related to this in that they're going to be looking at active transportation connections to the borough and to other areas within White Township through their complete streets policy process. So that's another opportunity to work with, like you're saying, with other municipalities and the county.
Has through the planning commission, the complete streets, the White Township has their version of the complete streets. And ultimately, it's good that we look at theirs and they look at ours, and ultimately, they're gonna all work together.
Some of the same people on the steering committees so that there was that coordinated effort for each of the plans.
One more historical comment. We're in a much better, I know, we're in a much better position on this than we were 6 years ago. Because we were the only ones doing this. The borough was the only one doing this 6 years ago.
Right.
And now the township, the county, there's a much more greater community involvement outside the borough of this. So, sorry.
Are there other questions, necessary discussion before we vote? Give me a second. Of approving this plan, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you to each group.
Thank you.
Anything else from community development? Okay, public safety.
We met on August 18th. And under personnel, we had quite a few letters of commendation. We had 3 letters of commendation and medal, 3 medals awarded for to 3 different officers, Jeff Fafferton, Michael Rako, and Jeffrey Hogue, for their work during COVID and some of the other things that they have been doing within the police department. And we also had recognition of performance to 4 of our officers for the type of work that they did in quelling situations that could have easily gone south. And I mention this because we don't always talk about it, but we have a pretty good police department that's really working at quelling situations instead of escalating things. One of the things that we've talked about here before, and it's ongoing, is our diversity inclusion partnership of Dr. Abigail Adams from IUP. Things are getting back to normal now that we're getting a little more adjusted to living with COVID. And August 12th, there was a department-wide meeting with Dr. Adams. And I think all this helps with our police reacting the way they do when they go into different situations. And I think this is to be really a feather in the cap for our chief and our mayor and other people in the police department, the sergeants and lieutenants. And a couple other things going on. We have an ongoing, according to the approval by council, getting a 2022 Ford Explorer from TriStar Motors via CoStar partnership, using and outfitting it with American Rescue Plan funds. That's still going on, and in consideration is an acquisition of a 2022 Ford Explorer from TriStar via a partnership with the assistance of grant funding. This is to bring our vehicle force up to date. One of the things that was a big issue years ago when Chief Sutton took over, was a lot of our vehicles didn't work. And he started a plan and Chief has picked up with it. Chief Shaw's picked up with it to maintain it, where we cycle in new vehicles and cycle out old ones so that we can keep vehicles for our police force in good working order. And that was it. But just a reminder too, there is the Northern Appalachian Folk Festival this weekend. So there will be a lot of people coming up into town to be on Philadelphia Street between 6th and 5th. Weather should be very good for this event.
Safety? Seeing none.
Great. So we met a couple Mondays ago. So I'm just going to go first with our first motion here is for a clarifier down in the wastewater treatment plant. It's a relatively sizable piece of equipment, and if you were to just ask me to describe it right now, I would have to tell you to come back to the Public Works meeting so I can ask John, our chief down there. This money comes, it's not a small amount of money, so it does come from our sewage maintenance fund. And if you scroll up for our balance, our sewage maintenance funds is healthy. So the move came to award final clarifier number 1 replacement bid to Hicks Associates in the amount of $128,280.
Motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Moving through our, I'm going to skip through, in particular though, our in-house paving project I mentioned there, planning South Lowry from Church to Klondike, and Shryock from 7th to 8th completed this year. So that's before the year, that's the goal. I should say for our in-house paving project, it's different than our contracted paving project in that stuff happens, storm sewers collapse and our folks get pulled away. So that is, I know that's his goal. I did want to mention about our Parks Department. It's been up and running for a couple of months now. We had a great report from them, pretty thorough report. They are on schedule, up and running. There's two folks. They are doing a lot of sort of catch up around the borough. We've heard from a lot from our Shade Tree Commission. There's a lot of just limbs and trees that are in front of signs and creating safety hazards. And so a lot of their work has been in not just training themselves up, but also doing doing a lot of that catch up. There's a lot of that to do. The plan is for that sort of work to get done, and then we'll release some regular maintenance among some of our places. In particular, I don't know, the 8th Street lot needs maintenance. I almost came out with my weed whacker, but I know I almost did it.
There the rest of the week they're not, the plan was for them to do a complete landscaping thing, but that's not going to happen till the fall. But they will be there this week getting it trimmed back and maintained.
It's an exciting thing. The Parks Department is up and moving and working with our Public Works crew as well. There's a little bit of a trade-off there, so that's a good thing that's happening. Sorry?
Meetings to attend Public Works.
At Public Works, Parks, yeah. Although they're at Shade Tree too. They come to Shade Tree Commission also as well. But the Parks employees themselves don't come to the meetings. They just report through Nicole or Paul, the Public Works Director. The Parks Department essentially is a sort of sub-department of the Public Works Department. Moving right on through another paving project for our contracted paving project. That might have started anyway. That's happening on Shryock. I'm going to skip on down unless there are particular questions about particular projects there in the engineer's report. In the new system of not going through all the pieces of the Public Department, I just want to always mention that our Public Works folks are out all the time collecting limbs. There was that storm the other day, it took them basically off everything they were doing, and they just walked around. They drove around and picked up trees and limbs that had fallen in the median. So I don't want to underestimate the amount of work that they've been doing, which is always a lot. If you look at we've continuing with our COVID collaboration. There was an increase that was expected as IUP is back in. Down at the wastewater treatment plant, we finally have internet. Only took a year. We have agreed, and I'm not sure if this has happened yet, but our electricity contract needs to be renewed. And so we've, rather than bringing it to committee every time, the thing changes pretty quickly. So we're going to allow Manager Sipos working with Roland, who's always done this, to sort of make a decision there. We looked at the active transportation plan. There's a bit down here. We did add some new business. Wanted to have a conversation about IRMC Park. There is money in the ARP plan, ARP budget, a little cash for thinking about a facelift for IRMC Park. There's some energy from some community member who owns the property there. Is really interested in making Indiana the gem of the IRMC Park the gem of Indiana. I think there's a possibility there for kind of have our little money partner with others and sort of may have a big facelift of IRMC Park. We suggested an ad hoc committee here, but I want to hold on to that because there's still some stakeholders who want to meet with and see if we can get the community development person on board. We did. Those are Borough umbrellas. Thanks, Kyle. Kyle got those. And I think our public works folks bring that in and out.
Did you hear Tom Harley's plan? Yeah, remember, Peter? He wanted like a whole pavilion in there. I'll show you the plan.
Sounds great. I would love it. With a splash park, it'd be fantastic. So that was it. Oh, we had talked about the community center, but we funded that to you guys. I'm happy to talk about any.
Other questions?
Went through a lot of things.
about public works?
So how is the North 7th Street conversation? How is that? So what's the game plan there in terms of, who's pulling together constituents? When are they going to meet? Are they all coming to Public Works? Like, just what's the landscape there?
So we just had this conversation right before at Public Works. I had the thought that we should own this. The borough should kind of drive this conversation. The history of IRMC Park, is that it got built as such with an agreement that the borough would not necessarily need long-term maintenance, and then that fell through. And so it's been on our shoulders, and we've just now, after 4 or 5 or 6 years, been able to pick that up. So we're maintaining that IRMC Park, which is a financial investment, and we have a little bit of money to invest in there, and long term it's our responsibility. So it's my thought that really the borough should drive this project, and I had suggested that we could drive this at Public Works and invite stakeholders. I think I might have forwarded you sort of a list of many stakeholders to bring in and host that at Public Works. And then folks reminded me that our Public Works meetings are already too long, and that's too much to add. We had suggested an ad hoc committee, and I was like, oh, man, these ad hoc committees. And so that's where we just left it right now and realized there's a little bit more information that I'd like to get in terms of what's the real commitment of some of the moneyed stakeholders before I actually sit down with folks. So my hope would be it's at Public Works, and we're staff is helping us drive it. It's possible it's an ad hoc committee.
Could we also at some point use a work session?
Yeah.
Discussion about it, just because,
Broader, yeah.
right. So broader just conversation and make it, put it in the newspaper or whatever, so that folks know if they want to come make public comment or, I mean, that would just be another way to get some discussion going.
I think it's a great idea. Say it again. I don't, that wasn't my idea. I don't think that's the idea. I'm one of the key partners is IRMC. So I don't know. If they come in, yeah, it depends. It's a little bit of a funding question, right? How much, if the uncle dies and we.
The history on this is in 2017, we had an ad hoc committee. I was on it. At the time, we did not have any staff members on it. So it was kind of some community members, some business folks, and we just talked about what we wanted, and we found out it was really expensive, and then it just kind of ended because we had no way of getting grants at the time. There was no function of that. So I think, at least in our discussion, we want to start here and then move on.
We don't need to establish an ad hoc committee now. I think
Sounds like a good idea. Yeah.
work session.
Any other questions for Public Works?
Look like you're busy. It doesn't look like you're too busy.
Have the shade tree, so you can't report when you do. Beyond that, Nicole.
Okay, I just want to inform about the sidewalk assessment that's taking place through Dr. Aaliyah Perry. She contacted a couple weeks ago. She's from the political science department. And they did the study 2 years ago, and they're going to go ahead and do the study again of Ward 2. So I guess, oh, the gentleman left, but so we could use that. I'm assuming then we can take those studies as part of when we approve the active transportation thing. That could be used for funding, because out of that plan, obviously sidewalks are an issue, and they say, part of that plan can be used for getting some of that funding to fix these sidewalks if there's anything through PennDOT and that. So these assessments that these grad students are working on will come in handy, hopefully down the road. And they started actually today. Our code officer was out there showing them what our code department rates as, a sidewalk that would need repair or is in violation. So that's, they started that today. I wanted to mention too about the stamp. They're going to be coming back at September 19th for the community development meeting, because a lot of people had some questions, and the people that were here presenting it weren't the ones who actually was really involved in the year process report. So they're coming along with a representative from DCED, explaining why the program, why the stamp thing is run through DCED and the benefits of having it done. So if you're not able to make the meeting and you have questions, if you want to email me your questions, but they're willing to come back to kind of give a second, like not a whole presentation, maybe just like a more of a Q&A type of presentation.
Actually coming.
The two gentlemen, two consultants are going to be here along with DCED.
And as
So-
opposed to a cookie cutter, it's definitely towards
Yes.
Indiana Borough.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So, and then explain any more questions that you guys, why some of the recommendations were made. And again, it's for recommendations. We can take some of the recommendations and move forward with them. We can take some and not do them. And then I wanted to bring up Councilman Ford got us in a great opportunity at the end of the month. Him and I are going to be working with the American Institute of Architects, and we're going to, it's called Shaking Up Small Cities presentation. So we're going to be working on roundtable talk with these people at the end of the month on the 29th or 30th. So you can get on YouTube and watch it eventually.
You got 2 hours to kill.
You guys are the panelists?
We are the panelists.
Communities and Indiana. It's, yeah, and then apparently they get legislature folks and that kind of stuff to watch it. It's more complicated than I initially thought it was going to be. Is what Nicole and I learned this morning, and so I apologize, Nicole.
So the audience is legislative.
Community members, legislators, and architects. Because the American Institute of Architects and architects and planners. Yeah, they've got some very specific questions, but I think we're going to try to broaden it to more kind of what we're doing for community development.
Trying to bring home bacon. Talking to legislators, asking for money.
We'll have some ideas when we sit down and talk. So, and I wanted to bring up too, Kyle and I and Greg met with Molly from, from the county and Shereen Hess, the commissioner, and about the Get Solar communities. So we're gonna go ahead and submit the application, and hopefully, I think it's a pretty good shot that we're gonna get picked to be one of the representatives of the 5 communities. They're gonna pick 5 communities to represent, right, Kyle, is my understanding. And then we'll work with, we're meeting with Chris Anderson tomorrow to get Indiana, or to get White Township involved in it with us. So, because they have some ideas, and I thought one of the biggest ones was our sewage plant, because that has come up a lot at Public Works, getting some solar ideas down there. So that's just started. We had a good first initial meeting, was explained. It's the time frame to turn around for the application is due next week, but Peter wrote a nice letter.
By himself.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, by yourself, you wrote it?
And we're working on getting some letters of support from the county, Sustainable Economic Development Task Force, and the Chamber of Commerce. So once we get all that,
Solar panels. And that is the program to get them to put them in. Is that what this is?
it would go. No, it's the idea to get tech, yes, to get,
I'll add some more context too, since I helped craft the letter and did a lot of other parts.
Better.
So basically, Get Solar program, it's a technical assistance program that is offered through the PA Solar Congress. It's a state nonprofit, and they work to help business owners and nonprofits go solar. So, and commercial properties are also eligible. So we're gonna actually run this in tangent with the ongoing Indiana County Solar Co-op, which is also active as of this month. Sorry if I stole anything from your report, Peter. I think you might. Okay, well, so that started. The county, that's kind of the more of the county thing. We helped take that off the ground in 2018, if you guys remember. Now they kind of, the Sustainability Task Force runs that more. And that is the one where you go and you say that you are interested in solar panels, you do the kind of application process involved with that. And then that's the one where there's one contractor with a group rate that gives you sort of a discount for going solar. Councilman Warnock was a member of that, I think, what, 2 years ago? So, yeah, he's got the expertise of how all that happens. But in tangent with that, we're hoping to do this Get Solar program, which is focused, again, more at the nonprofits and commercial properties. And so municipalities are also eligible, which Nicole mentioned, the treatment plants. Shereen Hess had mentioned maybe the jail as one of the county's potential places. White Township said they're interested in the rec center. So these are all places that, you know, we would like to go solar, and PA Solar Congress is willing to work with us to give us, you know, the nitty gritty details of what funding is available, how to apply for the funding, when you can expect to receive the funding. So if you have a residential property and you're interested in solar panels, I would refer you to the Indiana County Solar Co-op. If it's a nonprofit or commercial or municipal building, that is more what the Get Solar program is oriented.
With future technology, future repairs, future upkeep, upgrades, et cetera.
When I say an application process, I mean in the sense of like you provide them with like your design specifications of your roof, information of that regard, and then they put together kind of your own personal assessment, and they work directly with you. So the borough would be essentially the facilitator between interested parties that want to get into the program, and then PA Solar Congress would be, you know, the professionals that work directly with the nonprofits, commercials, municipal buildings. Really, it's technical assistance more so than financial, like outright financial assistance. But as we all are probably aware, there's a lot of new incentives at state and federal levels passed from recent bills. And I can't tell you what, but PA Solar Congress can. So. program administrator, whose name's Leo. We were hoping to meet today, but we just couldn't get around.
That's it.
For the manager. Chief.
Mr. President, thank you. In council packet tonight is our August of 2020 calls for service report. August 2022, the report will reflect that we, the police department, responded to or handled 659 calls for service. Compared to August of 2021, we handled 652, and compared to August of 2019, 600. So the workload is beginning to balance across all fronts with calls for service. Calls for service activity report. There's always an opportunity to talk about this in more detail at public safety. This report will be given to public safety. We have an active 45 days ahead of us in Indiana Borough. We have NAF, we have IUP's homecoming, we have the Love of Life 5K, we have an Oktoberfest that's going to happen adjacent to the Borough building. Just ask, also reiterate that we're asking for motorists to be patient as we have our special events through town, to expect detours, to give yourself extra time to navigate. There will be increased traffic and increased pedestrian traffic. These can all be good things within Indiana Borough if we so we're asking our to be patient and recognize that there will be increased traffic and increased pedestrian traffic in the area for the next 45 days for those 4 events. Police department's working in coordination with the manager's office, with Public Works, with Code Department, with Parking Department to coordinate all these events. I would just reiterate before all these events take place, because it's going to be such an active month, that this is really everyone working together. I know that public safety a lot of times is focused perhaps more narrowly on the police department, and of course that is our job. But public safety effort for special events requires street closures, detours, vendors permits to be checked, electrical outlets to be checked. And so there will be a large scale effort by all staff within the next 45 days. I just wanted to bring to council's attention that on August 29th, every year I have crafted some type of a letter to our IUP student residents, just prepping and preparing them for fall activities and partnerships. And I just want council to know that on August 29th, I chose a bit of a different avenue, but I did pen a letter and I submitted it to the Pen, and the Pen did publish it, but they published it under a letter to the editor. So I'm not 100% certain how many students that would reach, but just the context of the letter. Welcome back to Indiana. I hope you consider Indiana and all we have to offer as your home while at IUP. And again, I'm skipping parts. The coming weeks will present us all with opportunities to be outside celebrating together and enjoying the best of Indiana IUP. Rest assured, celebrating and representing Indiana and IUP with pride are not mutually exclusive ideas. They just require a commitment to safety and respect. As you plan or attend events and gatherings, always keep these things in mind. And say your loved ones and community are counting on you to make good decisions and stay safe. Visitors to IUP do not share the same sense of community and university pride or responsibility. Your best intentions can easily subvert by the actions of others, and alcohol consumption impairs judgment. Safety and well-being of everyone is our priority, and positive relationships matter greatly to us. Many of your police officers are IUP graduates who are committed to being safe and successful in handling any and every situation presented in today's world for the betterment of us all. We are with you, never against, and we are all better and safer together. And there's more to the letter, but that is the crux of the letter that was crafted for IUP students. I want council to be aware that we are going to announce testing for civil service, because our current civil service list expires in December. So we will be recruiting and we'll be reaching out again to our media partners, both in the room, to help us with our advertisement and recruitment. And again, that is to keep a list active for potential candidates for hire. I think that's all I have for today.
Question, Chief. In regards to your letter to the students, it's nice nice tradition. And I like the idea of reaching out in a different way. And I don't know if it's possible. I don't know how much students read the pen, but it might be possible next year, if you're interested, because there's other ways to push things out, like my IUP and that kind of stuff. And it might be that it's a co-letter from you and the director of public safety at IUP. I mean, is that something, if that, just because now we've got IUP representation here, that might be a future conversation if it's something that you're interested in.
Oh, thank you. I would be interested. I mean, this is perhaps a bit of a non-traditional approach, but it takes nothing away from our police mission. It's just a way to perhaps engage with our students. Different, more positive tone.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we can work together. IUP Now is a publication that goes out to the entire IUP community. As Ben said, my IUP, but I'd also like to be sharing that with our alumni. A lot of our alumni have students, children that are here at IUP, but I think as broadly and widely that we can share that positive message and really emphasize that it's a partnership between IUP and the community, and what a great model you are for leadership with the police here in town. I think it's great. We should be sharing that as much as we can.
Is my hope that we will have, excuse me, the draft ordinance asking to be advertised for the redistricting. I'm hopeful that we'll have that ready for the work session. Nicole and I have been working the last several weeks trying to find some, for lack of a better term, some guidance and samples, and there just really isn't a whole lot out there. So a lot of this is going to be crafted originally, I guess, is for lack of a better term. I'm sorry. Yeah, I did misspeak. But I'm just, we have to basically build this ordinance and we want to make sure that it does what you want it to do. So I'll continue to work with Nicole on that. And then my hope is that we'll have something for you at the work session to possibly consider advertising. What's that?
No, it doesn't have to.
It can go wherever you'd like it to go.
That's what we said last time, at the last meeting, but okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
We already had a vote
To
request
authorize
the
me to do it.
solicitor to do this. And I think that's as much as that we need to have come out of committee.
Once I draft it and bring it forth, if you decide to assign it to a committee, you can do that.
We were said, that's all. That was what was, yeah.
Work session, where we're called on to advertise it. It turns out that there are a number of
Whatever, right? I got you.
some issues with it, then we can
Certainly.
send it to a committee very easily.
With regard to Dunkin' Donuts, we are still waiting on Judge Clark to either set a oral argument or to render a decision. He has our response. He has the record. I'm not sure which way he's going to go on that. He may bring both parties in for an oral argument, or he may just rule. So we're waiting to hear from the court how they want to proceed. But that's really all I have at the moment.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, you've been patient, Jen. You're on.
I have just a few updates, and I think Kyle has probably shared this document out with the group. But it was announced that IUP was just approved for a $1 million project as part of the Southwestern Pennsylvania New Economy Collaborative, which is part of the $62.7 million federal Build Back Better Regional Challenge Grant. So this really all goes towards workforce development initiative to expand our presence, partnership, and impact in the Pittsburgh region. So it's a big shout out for us. We're at the table with some pretty big players, so great for IUP. In addition to our regional outreach, Dr. Driscoll was on September 4th the Bill Flanagan's Business Affairs Show, Our Region's Business. He was featured there as well. So you can, the link was shared within that document. You can check that out. We were also recently selected for Princeton Review Best Colleges Guidebook for the 22nd consecutive year. And we were also highlighted as the Best Health Services ranking. And that's one of only 25 college and universities health services selected for that list. Both of those selections come directly from interviews and information, direct feedback that they get from students. So it's really good to know that we're in our students' eyes, and that's most important, that we're doing a good job for them. Council of Trustees will be meeting this Thursday, September 8th. You're all welcome to join for the public meeting, which begins at 5 p.m. We're in the KCAC in conference rooms 6 and 7. And then later that evening, we'll be recognizing our recently promoted faculty at an event, at a reception that the president will be hosting with trustees and other university leadership. I've included a link there so you can see our recently promoted faculty. September 12th, we have two things happening. Our 9/11 remembrance ceremony is at 11:30 a.m. in the Oak Grove. Our rain location is in Fisher, and we have all of our local community members and EMTs, fire, police, so forth. They'll all be joining us as well as they do every year. And our keynote speaker is Danny Sacco. He works over at the hospital, but he's also a guest professor in Everly College of Business. We'll also be celebrating Constitution Day later that afternoon with a public reading from 2 to 3 in front of Stapleton. IUP's Department of Counseling has been invited to join the Cambria County Drug and Alcohol Program and reaching educational achievements with clinical mental health. It's a school-based mental health agency to provide interns for supervised counseling and support for students in Cambria County schools. So it's really great hands-on experience for our IUP students to help struggling students in Cambria County school districts. Our role is really to provide those interns from the Clinical Mental Health Counseling Master's Program and under the supervision of faculty in the IUP Counseling Department. So that'll start in the spring of 2023. And then just to highlight, yes, we do have some very busy weekends coming up, September 23rd through the 24th. You'll see a very large influx of people coming into the community. We have 3 reunions, our Alumni Legacy Breakfast and the Athletics Hall of Fame, which Pat, you should be there. We're highlighting the 1993 football team, which I know you were a part of the coaching, I think, on the sidelines and such. So it'll be a really nice weekend. We're also recognizing some locals, Rodnell and Reddick. They are receiving our honorary bell ringer awards for their support of athletics throughout the years. And then September 30th and October 1st is homecoming activities. Our board of directors will be in, and then the parade and our Crimson Huddle will follow at the KCAC right before the game.
For that Hall of Fame, what's the deadline?
You may have missed the deadline, but I'll fit you in. Yeah, if you can email me, we need to get,
Like 2 weeks from now?
forth, just due to supply chain issues and such, we need to get our numbers into our catering folks a bit early, just so we can ensure that we have, adequate.
Reeves is like a local, that Tony Medvitz, and like my husband's on the tennis team too. So a whole bunch of them are coming.
Tony had supplied us with a list of individuals that would be invited, so we do have factored in for some of those numbers, even though we haven't heard from all of them. We pad our numbers a little bit, but if you email me tomorrow, we can get you registered. Yep. And that's all I have for tonight.
Questions? Report. Afternoon, the Indiana County Active Transportation Advisory Committee is meeting, and I'm a member of that, so take into account what we've done today. And I just wanted to mention the Oktoberfest, that it's not going to be adjacent to the Borough building, it's going to be across the street. It's a public street between us.
Yes.
And that committee representing the home brewers. Yeah. was no stormwater meeting this month. I kept looking to see,
There was not an email sent out by the chair because the chair is no longer the chair. I can't explain what I don't know anymore.
and there were people there.
I'm sure.
Be sharing it now.
Actually, Kyle was
I
coming as
offered,
close to
I offered to help,
chairing
but I'm
it
not
as-
taking minutes.
Well, the work, he just doesn't
I
want the
guess.
title. That went.
Yep. Tried my best.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've been waiting patiently. I think that's what you meant.
Well, we saved the best for last.
I wasn't very articulate. Okay.
I had a meeting last week with developers that are going to be creating what will end up being the largest retail business in downtown Indiana. I think that's a big deal. And very encouraging. So it's, we'll keep an eye on it. And as I know that we can let more things out as to what's going on, I'll certainly bring that along. But it does dovetail with what we talked about earlier. It all comes back to parking. And so I think we want to focus on how we can be good business stewards with businesses downtown to adhere to what they're asking. In this particular case, this company will be open from 7 to 7. So again, they're saying, ticketing till 5 o'clock would really help a lot. And also no tickets on, or no meters on Saturday, I'm sorry. So that's been requested. I have 5 companies that have asked me that the last 2 weeks.
People in our meeting requesting that.
So just keep bringing it up. I also know that we need to create revenue, so it's tough on both sides, but it's out there.
Parking vouchers somehow.
School matter. Weren't we trying to finalize an order for new parking meters? So if this plays into what the times would be, wouldn't we need to know that sooner than later, or we're gonna waste a bunch of money?
You can always move them.
Apparently, these are gonna have digital readouts of when the parking is.
You can change that digital readout. Change.
Again, it's based on the enforcement. Our enforcement has been till 7 o'clock for the 20 years I've been here. But we have chose because of certain circumstances without, we didn't have the staff, COVID, they chose not to enforce till 7. So we can go back there. Our ordinance can stay the same. Again, we can always, our enforcement, we would like people to plug the meter till 7. If they choose to plug the meter, if they choose not to plug the meter, that's up to them. But the enforcement hours are till 7.
To hear about that when we were talking about parking, if it was gonna be on the scales of when timing was, and would that make a difference when it came to finalizing the order for the new meters? Okay. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Because it'll be a real shot in the arm for downtown.
Doing that kind of work, Bill, something that. Please share with us any information. New business?
As we're having the evening in the stacks again. It's Friday, October the 28th, 5 to 7 p.m., $30. It's going to be a costume competition again. This time it'll be 3 prizes. If you read the program upon arrival, you will see out of 100 points. The theme is WOW, witches, owls, and warlocks and more. The Indiana Free Library is located on 845 Philadelphia Street. The phone number, Luke, is 724-465-8841. And you can purchase the tickets, $30 at the front desk starting tomorrow. And y'all are invited too. I might consider giving y'all free tickets if you give me your name and stuff. prior to the, and I'll put your name on the list and go to pick up tickets.
I know.
Any other new business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, when's- They came, they got the permits and stuff like that, but,
Plan, make sure we don't have to like vote against our zoning again.
No, that shouldn't even enter.
No parking in front, right? Trying to stick to our built infrastructure, try to like